Hey everyone, welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love bold and beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. All right, let's dive right in.
The atmosphere inside the hospital was heavy that night, thick with tension and a kind of quiet panic that settled in the sterile halls like a fog. The bright fluorescent lights above cast a pale, almost cold glow across the delivery room where Luna Nozawa lay, her face flushed and damp, strands of dark hair plastered to her forehead. She had fought for hours, each contraction pulling her closer to the moment everyone had been dreading and hoping for all at once. The baby's arrival was supposed to bring some kind of light, some fragile hope after the endless storm of secrets, betrayals, and fear. But for Luna, the stakes had always been different. It wasn't just about welcoming a new life. It was about surviving it. Bill Spencer stood just outside the delivery room door, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his tailored black jacket. His usually sharp, controlled demeanor faltered every few minutes as he glanced toward the door, waiting for any sound, any sign. His jaw clenched so tightly the muscles in his face twitched. For weeks, he had been carrying the unbearable weight of knowing Luna's pregnancy was high risk. The complications had been whispered about behind hospital walls, and the doctor's expressions were rarely reassuring. Still, Luna had insisted on going through with it. She had wanted to give this baby a chance, even if it meant risking everything. Inside, Bridget Forrester was leading the medical team. Her calm, clear voice rose above the sound of beeping machines and the labored breaths that escaped Luna's trembling lips. Bridget had seen many births, many emergencies, but something about this one gnawed at the edge of her composure. She was fully aware of the risks. Luna's body had been under immense strain for months, and her vital signs had already been dancing on a dangerous line all evening. Finn had stepped in to assist, his brow furrowed with concern as he checked Luna's pulse, monitoring her oxygen levels with precision. The entire team was on edge. Luna's grip on the sheets tightened as another wave of pain crashed through her body. Her eyes fluttered shut, and a small whimper escaped her. I can't, she whispered hoarsely. Her voice cracked with exhaustion, fear, and something else, a quiet resignation that terrified everyone in the room. Bridget leaned closer, brushing Luna's damp hair away from her face. Yes, you can. Luna, look at me. You're stronger than this. We're almost there, she said firmly, though her throat tightened around the lie. They weren't almost there. The baby's heart rate had dipped again, and time was slipping through their fingers like sand. Finn leaned closer, his voice low but steady. Luna, listen to me. Just a few more pushes, okay? You can do this. Stay with us. His words carried the weight of someone who had seen life and death collide too many times. He didn't want to lose her. Not like this. Not after everything that had already been lost. In the hallway, Rich paced with his arms crossed tightly against his chest. Steffi stood nearby, her arms wrapped protectively around herself. She wasn't particularly close to Luna, but she understood how fragile life could be. She had seen it before, too many times. And even though she carried her own complicated feelings about Luna, the idea of another young woman dying in childbirth sent a shiver down her spine. It was too real, too cruel. Inside, Luna gasped, arching her back, the room erupting into urgent activity. The baby was coming faster than expected. Bridget gave quick, sharp instructions to the nurses. Finn steadied Luna's head as she screamed, her voice raw, echoing through the sterile room. For one long, endless moment, everything blurred. The rush of movement, the rhythmic beeping, the pounding of hearts desperate to keep time with life itself. And then a cry. A thin, sharp wail pierced the air. A baby's cry. A sob escaped Luna's lips as the sound reached her ears. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. Fragile but strong, a reminder of why she had fought this hard. Bridget quickly lifted the tiny infant into the nurse's waiting arms, checking vitals as they wrapped the baby in a soft blanket. It's a girl, Bridget said softly, almost reverently. For a brief second, everything else faded away. Luna's head turned weakly toward the sound, her tired eyes blinking slowly as tears slid down her cheeks. She whispered something barely audible, but Finn leaned in and heard it. My baby. The nurse brought the baby over to her, and Luna weakly lifted her trembling arms. The child was so small, so impossibly delicate, and yet radiated warmth and life. Luna pressed her lips to the baby's forehead, closing her eyes. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered shakily. "Mommy's here." It was a moment so tender, so heartbreakingly pure. It made Bridget's throat tighten, and even Finn's steady heart stumble. For a few seconds, it almost felt like everything would be okay. Luna was exhausted, but she was still here. The baby was alive. There was hope. But then Bridget saw it. The color draining from Luna's face too quickly, the monitor flashing warnings in bright red. Her breathing grew shallow. The warmth in the room shifted, replaced by a cold panic that every medical professional recognized instantly. "Luna." Bridget's voice sharpened. She looked at the monitors, at Luna's heart rate dropping, at the sudden surge of internal bleeding on the readouts. "We're losing her pressure. She's hemorrhaging," Bridget barked to the team. The nurse gently took the baby from Luna's arms as Finn pressed down on her abdomen to assess the bleeding. Blood pooled too fast. Too much. It was happening. Outside, Bill felt the energy change. He had lived enough life to know when something was wrong. He took a step toward the door, but a nurse raised a hand, blocking him. "Sir, you need to stay out here," she said, but her voice was shaky. That only made the dread sink deeper into his chest. "What's going on in there?" he demanded. No one answered. Inside, everything turned into a frantic rush. Bridget ordered blood units. Finn worked with precision, trying to stop the hemorrhage, but Luna's vitals were dropping like a free fall. Luna's eyelids fluttered, her breathing ragged. "Stay with me, Luna," Finn pleaded as he leaned over her. "You just brought a baby into the world. You can't leave now. Stay with us." Her lips trembled into a faint smile. "She's beautiful," Luna whispered weakly. Bridget squeezed her hand tightly, her voice thick. "She is. But she needs you." But Luna was fading. Her body had given everything it had. The pregnancy had pushed her to the brink, and now there was nothing left to hold on to. She tried to focus on the ceiling above her, on Bridget's voice, on Finn's hand gripping hers, but everything began to blur. The sounds became distant. The light above her seemed to dim. She saw flashes of the people she loved, her motherly, who despite their fractured bond, had always wanted to protect her. She saw Bill's concerned face. She saw the tiny little face of her baby girl. And then, a strange calm washed over her. Bridget's voice turned urgent. "Code Blue," she shouted. The team jumped into action. Finn climbed onto the stool beside her, starting chest compressions as Bridget prepared the crash cart. The room filled with the shrill sound of alarms and hurried footsteps. Every second stretched like an eternity. Bridget's hands shook just slightly as she took the defibrillator paddles. "Clear," she called out. Luna's body jerked violently under the shock. Nothing. They tried again. And again. In the hallway, Bill's knees nearly buckled when he heard the alarms. Ridge grabbed his arm to steady him. "They're doing everything they can," Ridge muttered, his own voice laced with tension. But Bill barely heard him. His eyes were glued to the door, praying for Luna to walk out holding that baby. Praying for a miracle he didn't even know how to ask for. Minutes dragged on like hours. The medical team fought with everything they had. Bridget's voice was hoarse from calling instructions. Finn's arms burned from compressions, but he didn't stop. He wouldn't stop. He had promised himself that no woman would die like this under his watch if he could help it. But medicine had its limits. And as the monitor flatlined in a sharp, unforgiving tone, silence descended upon the room like a heavy shroud. Bridget froze, her gloved hands hovering over Luna's chest. Finn's hands fell slowly to his sides. A nurse wiped at her eyes as another turned off the alarm. The sound of the flatline still echoed in their ears, even after it was silenced. Bridget checked the time and whispered it, her voice cracking. "Time of death. 11:42 p.m. The words felt unreal. Finn stared at Luna's still face, so young, so full of life just hours ago. She had smiled through pain, fought through fear, and now she was gone. He felt a deep, hollow ache in his chest, the kind that didn't just fade. Bridget removed her gloves slowly, tears stinging her eyes. She had delivered hundreds of babies, saved lives, lost others. But this one hurt. Luna had walked into that hospital determined to bring her child into the world. And she had succeeded. But at the cost of her own heartbeat. Bill didn't need anyone to tell him. When Bridget finally stepped out of the room, still in her scrubs stained with the weight of what just happened, he saw it in her eyes. He didn't hear the words at first, just saw her lips move, saw the way her shoulders trembled. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. His entire body went cold. For a moment he couldn't breathe. It was as if the floor had disappeared beneath him, and he was falling into a void with no end. Steffi covered her mouth, her own eyes filling with tears. Ridge bowed his head. Even those who had complicated feelings toward Luna felt the brutal weight of it. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not to someone so young. Inside the room, Finn remained for a long time, his hand resting gently against Luna's lifeless arm. The baby, her baby, was safe in the nursery, being cared for by the nurses. She would never know her mother's voice. She would never feel her mother's touch beyond those first few fragile moments. Finn closed his eyes, swallowing hard against the lump in his throat. "You did it," he whispered quietly. "You gave her life." Bill finally entered the room, ignoring the nurse who tried to stop him. His footsteps were heavy as he approached Luna's bedside. Seeing her like that, still pale, peaceful in a way that didn't belong to someone alive, shattered something inside him. He reached out, his fingers brushing against her cold hand. "You weren't supposed to leave," he whispered, his voice rough and broken. "Not like this." His chest heaved as the tears finally came. Bill Spencer wasn't the type of man who cried easily. But this gutted him. Luna had been complicated, fiery, stubborn, but she had also been full of light. And now that light had gone out. Bridget watched quietly from the door, giving him space. She knew there was nothing anyone could say to make this better. There was no way to make death neat or clean. It was always messy, always cruel. The baby, so small and unaware, lay in the nursery wrapped in a soft pink blanket, a tiny heartbeat against the vast silence of the night. She was alive because her mother had given everything. And now, her life would carry the weight of that sacrifice. Word of Luna's death spread through the family like wildfire. Lee Nozawa arrived later that night, collapsing against the wall when she saw her daughter's still body. She screamed, a raw, animal sound that tore through the halls. She had been angry at Luna, had said things she could never take back. But nothing prepares a mother for that final moment. When there's nothing left to fix, nothing left to hold on to. Hope was gone. Steffi wept quietly, holding Finn's hand. Even Ridge, the man who had wanted Luna out of their lives, stood in silence, his expression grim and heavy. This wasn't the ending anyone wanted. And yet, through the grief, a tiny light remained. Luna's baby, her daughter, had survived. She was a piece of Luna that would live on. Bridget made sure the baby was stable, healthy, breathing strong. "She's a fighter," Bridget whispered to herself as she looked down at the little girl. "Just like her mom." Bill stood at the nursery window later that night, watching the baby sleep. His hand rested against the glass. He didn't know what the future would look like, who this little girl would become, or how they would tell her about her mother one day. But he knew one thing with unwavering certainty. She would never be alone. Not if he could help it. The night was quiet outside the hospital. The city slept, unaware of the heartbreak inside those walls. Inside, one life had ended, and another had begun, entwined forever by a sacrifice that no one would ever forget. Luna Nozawa's story ended that night, but her legacy, her love, lived on in the tiny heartbeat she left behind. The morning after Luna's death, the world outside looked the same. The sun still rose over Los Angeles, spilling golden light over the ocean, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. But for those who loved Luna, nothing felt the same. The world seemed muted, as if color itself had faded from the edges of everything. There was a hollow quiet that settled in. The kind that follows a loss so sharp, it doesn't even feel real yet. It was the silence of shock. Inside the hospital, the walls that had echoed with the baby's first cries just hours earlier now carried the sound of grief. Lee Nozawa sat in a stiff plastic chair in the family waiting area, her hands clenched together so tightly her knuckles were white. Her usually sharp and composed expression was gone. In its place was something raw and unbearable. the face of a mother who'd lost her child. Her mind kept replaying the last conversation she'd had with Luna. All the words they hadn't said, all the apologies that would never come. And John Finnegan was preparing to confront his mother, Lee Finnegan, about secrets she had held. Secrets that could potentially link to everything that had happened. LA was no longer quiet. It didn't hold its breath. The storm had broken, and no one, not Luna, Bill, Sheila, or Taylor, could control it anymore. As Deputy Chief Baker locked up his documents that night, he realized it wasn't the end. Luna Nozawa was preparing to fight. People like her have always done this. But for the time being, it appeared that justice had the advantage. Bill Spencer rested against the edge of his desk in his office, the city lights flashing outside the window. "We did what we had to do," he told Katie. Katie reached for his hand. "We did." Luna glanced at the ceiling of her cell, her breath weak, her future unknown. The baby she thought would save her was the same baby who would bind her to the Spencers indefinitely. And in the midst of it all, murmurs began. Whispers about custody battles, betrayals, old fires reignited, and frightening women lurking in the shadows. Because in this town, nothing ever really ends. It only waits for the next secret, betrayal, or storm. And as the week of October 13th, 2025, progressed on The Bold and the Beautiful, every whisper, stare, and lingering touch held significance. Deputy Chief Bradley Baker had made the arrest. Bill and Katie had drawn a line in the sand. Sheila was beginning to crack. Deacon was caught between two worlds. The holding cage was not what Luna had expected. She'd spent her entire life imagining herself surrounded by soft textiles, sparkling parties, and flashing cameras, rather than cold metal bars and a thin, scratchy blanket. The subtle odor of disinfection persisted in the air, and the buzzing fluorescent light above her head made her feel as if the walls were closing in. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't grinning her way through a conversation, or wearing luxury clothes. She was just Luna Nozawa, afraid, alone, and acutely aware that she had lost control of everything. She wrapped her arms around her midsection for protection. The infant remained her only tie to something greater than herself. But for the first time, she worried if that would be sufficient. Bill Spencer was not the type of person who bluffed. The way he stared at her when Baker cuffed her did not indicate hostility. It was terrible. It was final. Baker had ensured Luna was processed fast. He'd seen hundreds of instances, but this one seemed different. This wasn't just another arrest. This was a power move, a message to Luna, the community, and perhaps even the world. No one can manipulate the Spencers and get away with it. As Baker exited the cell, Luna slapped her hand on the bars. "You cannot keep me here indefinitely," she exclaimed. He did not even turn around. "No," Baker responded quietly. "But I can make sure you're here long enough." The metallic clank of the door closing behind him left her standing in a deafening silence. Back at Spencer Publications, Bill stood in front of his office's floor-to-ceiling windows, the city lights shimmering below like 1,000 distant stars. But Bill wasn't looking at the view, not really. He was deep in contemplation, one hand in his pocket, and the other carrying a glass of bourbon he hadn't even taken a taste of. Katie stepped in silently, her heels softly clicking against the gleaming floor. She paused for a bit to study him. She recognized that look. Bill Spencer was a man who thrived on power, control, and ensuring that no one saw him bleed. However, there was a vulnerable look in his eyes. "She's where she belongs," Katie eventually replied, moving closer. Bill didn't answer immediately. He tipped the glass slightly to watch the amber liquid catch the light. "I know," he replied after a long pause. "But it doesn't make any of this easy. She attempted to utilize our son, Bill. She believed she could get away with everything. This isn't only about Luna. This is about Will. About ensuring that he is not lured into a life that he does not deserve." Bill exhaled slowly. "I will not let her raise that baby. No chance in hell. I'm going to make certain that our grandson grows up in a stable home, with us. Not with a woman who treats people like chess pieces." Katie nodded. This was the aspect of Bill she trusted. The protector and tactician. "Then we fight. Hard." Bill finally stared at her, his face hardening again. "We aren't simply fighting, Katie. We are winning." Across town, Will sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his phone message. He had just found out. Someone had provided him a link to a gossip website. Photos of Luna being arrested outside his father's house had previously circulated widely. 4. His chest constricted. Regardless of how complicated things had become between him and Luna, and how many falsehoods had been told, she was still carrying his child. And seeing her brought away in handcuffs affected him harder than he anticipated. Katie knocked quietly on the door before entering. "Hey," she said gently. "Well, did not look up. It's all over the internet." Katie sighed and sat down alongside him. "I understand. People move quickly." He gulped heavily. "She's carrying my kid, Mom." "I know," she said kindly. "I don't want my baby to grow up without a mother," Will murmured, his voice tiny and younger than he had in years. "Even if she botched up, she is still the baby's mother." Katie leaned out and laid her hand on his shoulder. "Will, your father, and I will make sure your kid has all it requires. Love, safety, stability. But Luna..." She paused, searching his face, made choices. And now she has to confront them. Will finally looked at her, his eyes bright. "I didn't think it would end up like this." "None of us did," she murmured. Meanwhile, Deputy Chief Baker sat in his office, flipping over Luna's files. He'd seen plenty of defendants try to play innocent and work their way out of the system. But Luna's case was convoluted, with lies, deception, family power, and now a high-profile pregnancy that ensured the tabloids wouldn't let it go away anytime soon. He picked up the phone. "Yeah. Put her on the schedule for tomorrow morning. Preliminary hearing. I want her arraigned right away. The Spencers are on the move, and I'm not giving her time to pull any tricks." Luna slept curled up on the short cot in her cell, hands resting on her stomach. She spoke quietly to the baby, as if the small creature within her could comprehend. "I will not let them take you from me. I don't mind what they say. I do not care how much money Bill Spencer has. I am your mommy. They can't simply erase me." But even as she spoke, the words did not sound strong. They sounded like a girl attempting to convince herself that she still had a fighting chance. She repeated every moment in her head, from the day she told Will about the pregnancy to the night she tried to flee, to the moment Baker read her rights. She had somehow lost control of the story. Bill Spencer was drafting the ending. The following morning, the courthouse was packed. Reporters lined the steps, their cameras sparkling like a swarm of fireflies. Luna was led inside wearing a beige jumpsuit, her wrists shackled in front of her. Whispers followed her like a shadow. "Is it true that the baby belongs to Will Spencer? Will Bill and Katie take custody? Did she falsify the test results?" She kept her head lowered. But the instant she walked into the courtroom and saw Bill and Katie seated together in the front row, it hit her like a slap. They weren't just watching. They were there to make a statement. "We are in control."